Good morning, East Bay. What is happening in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano counties? Learn about what's happening in our communities, an in-depth conversation so you know what's going on. We're talking to government, economic, political, nonprofit, and business leaders here in the greater East Bay. I'm Jared Asch, the host of the Capstone Conversation. Today, we will talk to the president and CEO of the East Bay Leadership Council, Mark Orcutt, and he also serves as the executive director of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, a nonprofit that does economic development work in our county. Mark, welcome to today's show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization.
Yeah, happy to. Great to be here, Jared. Good to see you. I guess I'll start with a little bit about me. So I grew up in the suburbs of Sacramento, where I met my now wife, Elizabeth, attended college at San Francisco State. Go Gators. I take that time in San Francisco to be a really important part of my own career and political journey. I think I was exposed to the political pressure cooker that is San Francisco. It's a community brimming with history, engaged neighborhood, and more political organization per capita probably than anywhere other than Washington, D.C. So it's a big part of who I am. And I continue to be proud of the time that I spent in San Francisco and optimistic about its future as well as the East Bay's. It was there that I first worked at a nonprofit called California Forward that was focused on governance reform, both in the state legislature. They were also focused on lifting up regional solutions to some really big issues that we faced at the state. And they also hosted a statewide economic summit, which I think has brought together some really important leaders over the years. It also introduced me to some really interesting leaders in the East Bay. Actually, my predecessor's predecessor in this role, Linda Best, I met through my time at California Forward. It also introduced me to folks who are giants in kind of the story of the East Bay and Sonny McPeak. It introduced me to County Supervisor John Joya. It's also where I first met and worked with my most recent predecessor in this role, Kristen Connolly, who led the East Bay Leadership Council and Contra Costa Economic Partnership for 9 years. After a stop at California Forward, went on to run some candidate and ballot measure campaigns, and then ultimately landed here at this organization about 9 years ago, and had the amazing opportunity and good luck and good fortune to become the CEO 1 year ago, actually this week. It's a little about me. I live in Walnut Creek. I love the East Bay. It's been our home for now coming up on 8 years now, and just think this community has so much to offer, and excited to have this role that brings together so many of the important community leaders and organizations and businesses that are not only such an important part of our past as a region, but our future. So it's a real honor to now sit in this seat.
Good to hear. And there was one thing that I did not like what you said, and it's in a different context, but it's that Go Gators. I know they became the San Francisco school mascot just a few years ago, but I went to Florida State, and our goal is to spear the Gators, but I'm talking about the University of Florida. So just got to weigh that for my Seminole alumni fans that are watching.
I do think, and I had a brief tenure as a tour guide at San Francisco State, so I'm not sure how exactly accurate this is, but Gator, one of the only, if not the only, Gator mascot west of the Mississippi at San Francisco State. And there's an interesting history there where they were actually the Golden Gators, ER. They were like militiamen guarding the bridge. And then ultimately it kind of transformed into being the OR Gators, chomp, chomp, go San Francisco State. That's my fun San Francisco State story for you.
Interesting. Hey, we learned a little bit of history where that name actually came from in there.
Yeah.
I was wondering how they did it not being in a swamp. So talk about what is the Contra Costa Economic Partnership. Let's hit that one first.
I have the opportunity to run kind of these two organizations, and I serve as the president and CEO of the East Bay Leadership Council and the executive director of the Economic Partnership. It's the same staff, they're separate boards of directors, separate memberships, but I think with ultimately an aligned mission to lift up our regional economy and improve quality of life for all. So they take slightly different approaches to those work in ultimately complementary ways. On the economic partnership side, the real focus there is on research and special projects, right? Also, the membership and that board looks a little bit different. It's more of a true public-private partnership. We have some key leaders from cities and the county as well as some of the largest employers in the region that help lead that organization, but more of this kind of true public private partnership organization. Some of the research that we've taken on has been everything from transit patterns and healthcare workforce demand to taking a close look at the opportunity gap in Contra Costa County. Some of the special projects have included expanding broadband and initiatives related to broadband access throughout the region, expanding work-based learning opportunities with some really exciting initiatives, and matching local leaders to nonprofits in need of board members. So those are some of the kind of the initiatives that we've incubated and started at the Economic Partnership. Only the tip of the iceberg there, but that's the story of this key.
Okay. And now what is East Bay leadership for those that don't know?
So the East Bay Leadership Council is a little bit more public facing, right? And that's why we have a lot of events out in our community. The East Bay Leadership Council is a nonprofit organization, employer-led nonprofit organization focused on strengthening the economy and improving quality of life. We do that in a number of ways, right? So we do that through public policy advocacy. That's one of the ways that it's different from our friends at the Economic Partnership. We take on issues at the local, regional, and state level, and we advocate on behalf of our members. And what we believe is sometimes local issues with regional impact. So we're not going to get into every single policy and political fight in the region, but when something comes up that we believe is of regional importance to our economy and our quality of life, those are the moments where we're going to enter the fold. Now, supporting the economy and quality of life, that's a big umbrella, right? That can pull us into a lot of different issue areas, everything from housing and transportation, education, workforce development, water, air quality, energy, manufacturing. The list goes on and on there. Healthcare, technology, so many issues that we can take on as an organization. I think that's one of the real challenges is our work to identify where those key inflection points for us to put our energy in any given year. In addition to our advocacy, we also run a program called Build the Bench, which is a candidate training program designed to help local people learn how to run and win elected office. We've run that program for about 6 years now, and we've got about a dozen alumni serving the communities they love in a number of capacities in elected or appointed office in the region. So that's certainly something that I'm really proud of, and we see as a critical part. We need great people showing up on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights whenever these public bodies meet, helping to lead these important conversations for our community, asking the hard question. And do these people agree with the East Bay Leadership Council 100% of the time? Absolutely not. That's not how it works. But hopefully, these are folks that understand what it means to problem solve and to think as a region, to think bigger than just sometimes your neighborhood on some of the issues that we face. That's Build the Bench, our candidate training program. And then on top of that, we have events that we hope connect, inform, inspire. If we do all three, amazing. If we do one of those at one of our events, then I think we check the box. That's everything from speaker series who are bringing kind of nationally renowned people to our community to have deeper conversation about the issues that we face. Policy task forces that take deep dives. It can feel like you're getting a master's degree in water engineering if you drop into some of our water, energy, and environment task force meetings. It's also the place where so much of our advocacy as our organization is started. It's where those conversations begin, where issues are raised. There was a group of folks coming out of our housing task force that said, we think it's going to be really important that the East Bay Leadership Council starts showing up and endorsing housing projects. So we're in the process of developing what that endorsement criteria are going to look like as an organization. But I think that's a great example of how our task forces, how our events can ultimately impact our strategy as an advocacy organization. So if I was going to cliff note it, partnership, research, and special projects. The East Bay Leadership Council is the advocacy and events arm. Lots of ways to get involved, both primarily employer-led, although we engage public sector leaders in all the work that we do.
That's helpful. So let's talk about it. You finished a year as the president and CEO role. What did the organization accomplish in the last year, and what are you most proud of to date?
There's a lot of things that I'm proud of. First and foremost, I do think that I'm increasingly proud of the impact that we're having with our candidate training program and Build the Bench. That runs in odd years. We had our fourth cohort go through this year. And I'm increasingly hopeful about the impact that that's going to have on the future. And I think a needed resource for our community. I think helping people learn how to run and win elected office. There were limited resources locally for folks who wanted a nonpartisan program, who could connect you with campaign professionals who know how to run and win these campaigns. I'm really proud of our Build the Bench effort.
In that first year, one of the key elements you've done is partner with a lot of organizations outside of just your core organization to reach out to the business community, to reach out to different geographies. Talk a little bit about that, as what drove you to it and what do those partnerships look like?
I'm really proud of all the ways. It was certainly one of my goals when I took on this role a year ago, is to continue to build on and deepen the relationships that we have with so many organizations in the East Bay. I think a couple of the ways that those partnerships have shown through was a partnership with the Lesher Foundation, Children Now, and First 5 Contra Costa, and the development of a report focused on the opportunity gap for children across Contra Costa counties. That's something that we did through the economic partnership. I think it presents really helpful data on a wide number of issues, from child care, education, physical and mental health, financial stability, that I think we need to think about as a community. These are our future leaders. These are the folks that we need to make sure that we're lifting up, and we need to be aware of the disparities that exist in our community. So I think that was a really important partnership that we continued, that wouldn't have been possible alone. I think all of us together helped to make that possible. I'm also think that our partnerships with local chambers have been really important. There's so many wonderful chambers of commerce in Contra Costa and Alameda County. I'm really committed to keeping those lines of dialogue open, getting together with them and supporting each other. There is more than enough work to do. And in running an active membership organization, there's never a shortage of ideas. And so the opportunity to work with others, hear the kind of issues that they're facing in their community, and coming up with those solutions together continues to be really important for me. I'm always happy to go, present on issues to our local chambers, and vice versa. If they have issues that they want to bring to our membership, I think we're certainly all stronger together. Another partnership that was an interesting one that we started this year was that we, for the East Bay Leadership Council, for more than a decade, had hosted this event called the Philanthropy Award, where we lifted up not only philanthropy, but community volunteerism in our community, and so many of the great nonprofits that are on the front lines of solving some of the greatest challenges that we face as a community. We've been doing that for over a decade, kind of a fixture event for us. And I looked around and I saw that Diablo Magazine was doing their Threads of Hope event, same time of year, same building, and honoring community volunteers. We reached out and I think built a really great partnership that only amplifies those stories about community volunteers and the work that they do to lift up local nonprofits. So I'm proud of that partnership as well. I also participate in a coalition of regional leaders, with folks with jobs like mine all across the state. We get together occasionally. It's called the Real Coalition. I think that is a great example. Even if we can get totally bogged down on all the issues we're facing just in the East Bay, we share plenty of challenges and opportunities with folks all across the state. And having the opportunity to sit down with folks from the Inland Empire in Southern California and find all the ways that we can collaborate together and potentially come up to Sacramento with a united voice, that only makes the business community stronger. I hope to not only to build those partnerships and work in coalition on a statewide level, but also as a regional level with our friends throughout the Bay Area and the business community, as well as all of the organizations in the East Bay, chambers, the Bay Area Council, East Bay EDA, Innovation Tri-Valley. All of these folks I find as friends and colleagues and partners in strengthening our regional economy. So I have not named everybody there, but wonderful groups all working towards a similar goal.
You gave a good example, and one of the things that I've scratched my head about is Contra Costa County, as an example, is going through a general plan update for the first time in like 40 years. And the chambers don't even know that that's really going on. Maybe one or two. I know Bob Lindstrom, Lloyd in Danville, Walnut Creek, right? They know what's going on, but others haven't really participated in it. And it's too bad, because there's no voice of that small business in that county plan, and economic development is a big piece of that pie. So I think anything you could do to bring them along and help provide them some guidance on that, as well as engaging with the Sacramento leaders in the East Bay and getting business on the same page. I think those are all just helpful things to encourage the conversation.
I think there's a few things that come to mind with that conversation, both about the general plan update, which is important on a number of levels, something we continue to engage with the county on, as well as industry leaders who are certainly impacted by those decisions at the county level. That could be a whole podcast. I also think there's opportunities to unite a lot of different organizations, stakeholders, and the East Bay legislative delegation this year related to the state budget. The state budget is in an interesting place this year, and it's going to raise a lot of questions related to where advocacy organizations like ours decide to either play offense for the priorities that we want to make sure get funded and continue, and defense for the things that we do not want to get cut under any circumstances. I think it raises some interesting questions. I think at the state level, it's going to be really important that the East Bay speaks with a united voice. Like, what are the 3 budget priorities that we have? And making sure that all of those priorities are on the list of our East Bay delegation when they're rolling up to Sacramento. So I think that'll be a really important collaboration opportunity and advocacy window for us as a region. We need to decide, are we going to try to play defense on tax incentives for businesses? Because I do think that those incentive programs are just one of those ways that in a down budget year, they can raise taxes without raising taxes. You eliminate a tax incentive. What you're doing is raising taxes on those industries, and you created that incentive for a reason, to try to encourage a certain type of business to grow and thrive. And we need to make sure that doesn't happen in the shadows and support those industries and hopefully play defense on those tax incentives in the year to come. So that's just one example of one of those priorities that I hope that we can unite an East Bay delegation around.
What you're talking about there is, don't shrink the pie when you have to save the budget, grow the pie, right? And if you have more business here, more economic growth, the pie will actually become bigger on that local level because you're contributing to the economy versus just cutting the tax base to save a temporary line item.
There can be a lot of difficult conversations in Sacramento this year related to the budget, but I do think it's going to be vitally important that the East Bay comes together, sets our own priorities as a coalition, and does our best to protect what we think is most important for our economy going forward.
Let's talk about some of those other policy areas. What are some other policy areas that you see East Bay leadership getting involved in 2024, 2025 here?
There's a number of issues that I could see us engaging with in the coming year, many of which I also expect to be top lines based on the current leadership changes in the state legislature. I would say housing and homelessness remains top of the list. It's been something that's been the top of the list for the East Bay Leadership Council for many years, and it remains there. I think there'll be a lot of really important conversations related to transportation funding. What's the right mechanism? And, what making sure that the East Bay in those conversations isn't an afterthought, that we get our share of the pie. The East Bay, may I remind you, is close to 40% of the Bay Area's population. And so we have political clout. We demand attention in these negotiations. And we need to make sure that we're getting our fair share as it relates to transportation funding. I also think there's some really important conversations that are going to happen related to the insurance market. I think a lot of those conversations will happen with the insurance commissioner and may beyond the scope of the state legislature. But the insurance market is a critical thing for us to address at the state level. We risk continuing to destabilize so many parts of our economy. Homeowners are going to feel it. Businesses are going to feel it. So I think the insurance market is another bullet that I would probably pull out in conversations in Sacramento and beyond in the year to come.
That makes sense. Most of us see headlines where insurance providers have left the state or aren't issuing new policies. You have State Farm, I think, said we're raising everybody's rates by 20%, but that could also mean 10% in one region and 40% in another region. Finding that balance and working through that together is something that Florida and Texas, that both have major insurance problems also related to hurricane, haven't been able to actually do. They just keep ignoring it.
Yeah, I think important that, I mean, this is a global insurance crisis created by a lot of different factors. So like this is a complicated dynamic to play out, and California is certainly at one of the leading edges of that right now. But it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I think we'll be engaging with it in the year to come.
Let's talk about the East Bay economy. What is the vision that the organization has for the economy in the East Bay? It's talked a lot about what is our potential, what is our future, and what is the East Bay Leadership Council's role in developing the economy here?
It's a good question. I think certainly it's shared is important. I think that, we're a diverse community. Contra Costa in so many ways, in the East Bay even more broadly, is a reflection of the state of California. I mean, we are not a monolith in the East Bay. What that economic vision looks like, I think, is a really interesting question, because I think so goes us, so goes the state of California. I certainly see a region poised to take advantage of a lot of really exciting opportunities. I think that the future of energy is being born here. We've got Lawrence Livermore fusion ignition breakthroughs happening in the Tri-Valley. We've got big investment in hydrogen happening throughout our region. We've got renewable diesel as a big part of our energy future. And I think that hopefully a hallmark of the East Bay's economy in terms of energy is that we will be known as a place where being in all of the above energy future can thrive. Because I do think that is the path forward. I think there's some really interesting things related to kind of our vision for helping those industries continue to grow. Manufacturing and energy also are two industries that have a incredible multiplier effect for jobs. It's something that we need to remember and keep in mind as we plan for the future of the energy economy in our region. That it's not just one company deciding to leave, that has a ripple effect across our entire economy. And we need to take a closer look at that. Like, what would be the impact of a change in the East Bay if we were to say, if one refinery decides to close, how does that impact the Bay Area's economy? Not just the economy of that city, not just the economy of our region. And I think there's some really important questions to ask there, because I think it's underappreciated, the role of the energy and manufacturing economy in the Bay Area. I think that part of that vision certainly is that there's some really exciting opportunities related to the future of technology. I know you've talked about this on the past in your podcast, is kind of autonomous vehicles, autonomous aircraft, the really exciting leadership that the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors has led on that issue, I think leaves us primed to have that be a part of our economic identity as a region, this kind of like hub for the next generation of autonomous vehicles. I think that's a really exciting hallmark for us to hang our hat on. I also think we need to lean in and maybe it's a rebranding, reframing, maybe it's the communications guy in me, but so many people like to talk about the East Bay as the bedroom community of San Francisco, and I'm not having it. Okay. We're not a bedroom community. We are the workforce center. We have a huge population. We have some of the most prestigious and world-renowned educational institutions, not just educational institutions, educators and schools from kindergarten to grad school. We are educating the future workforce of not just the Bay Area, but the world. And that is an opportunity for our region. I mean, I can keep going on and on. We've got deep water port. There are so many things about the East Bay that make it a compelling place to do business. I think that we have, but first and foremost, I want to go back to the bedroom thing, because nothing gets me fired up more. People are like, oh yeah, Contra Costa, Alameda County is like bedroom community, right? And we're a region of 2.8 million people. 2.8 million people. Like, that is not a sleeping bedroom community. I want it. Like, we are a workforce hub for the Bay Area. And as we think about what a thriving job center is, because I think the definition of a thriving job center is changing. I think one of the best economic advantages you can have is your workforce. And well, there are barriers to that, right? Cost of living is an issue. And across industries, across professions, across whether you're trying to recruit a physician or a communications associate on your team, you are going to run into this cost of living as an issue for for your business. And I think we need to address that as a region if that workforce component is going to continue to be a strength for our region. We need to continue to increase the housing supply. This needs to continue to be a strength for the East Bay. There's a lot of things set up. I think we're primed to embrace the future of water reuse. I think we have some really innovative water agencies in the region. I think we could be at a tipping point for water reuse, recycling, advanced purification related to water. There's a lot of things that I think the East Bay could be known for. Those are some that are coming top of mind for me this morning.
I think you make a good point, right? Stop calling us a bedroom community. We are a logistical hub between Central Valley, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento, Stockton, right? Contra Costa sits in the middle of all of that. And we still have room to grow here, right? We have not only infill like a city does, but we also have open land, remediated land, and there's a good opportunity. I think one of the big things that I've noticed, and you and I have talked about in the past, is a lack of working together, right? And that every city's sort of on economic development on your own, and there is no brand, there is no Silicon Valley, there is no Innovate Tri-Valley, right? That covers a lot of the geographic area where your organization is active. How do you address that?
It's an interesting question. I think for the brand, right? I think some of the things,
Maybe it's not a brand, maybe it's how do you attract the right businesses around that?
I think it's a good question. How do you attract the right business? And I think it can be easy to just go after your white whale, right? Go after that one big business you want to bring that's going to solve all your problems. But I think it might be short-sighted that we need to focus on creating the policy environment. And at least this is the goal at the East Bay Leadership Council. How do we create a policy environment where businesses can start, stay, and grow? Be known as that. Be as a place where businesses can thrive, where your workforce can thrive, and worry about the brand name later.
I guess that's the question I should be asking you. What's the policy framework for that, right?
I think we need to be known as a place where approvals are fast, where approvals are streamlined. I think that needs to continue to be a part of our identity and I think there are pockets of the East Bay that are cities that are doing this really well. And maybe we need to do a better job of telling that story that we are a good place to do business. Our business taxes are lower than a lot of the places where you are currently deciding to open up your business. I think helping to tell that story will be important. But I also understand that like when a company's making a decision about where to put their headquarters, there's a lot of decisions that come to mind, right? It's not just permitting. It's not just any of these things. Where do they want to live? And I think we score pretty highly there, but also it's a question of where their employees come from. And this is where I often circle back to if you're drawing a big circle on a map and they're trying to decide how much they're going to have to pay their employee to come to work there, they're going to ask these questions. But do you think affordability and increasing our housing supply continues to be a critical policy lever for us to pull if businesses are going to choose to call Contra Costa County the East Bay home?
Mark, there were some areas you were talking about that the organization can touch on. What is manufacturing in the East Bay? How do you define that? And what is the economic impact on the whole Bay Area economy?
It's a great question, Jared. And I think one that our organization can play a real role in asking and answering, because I think too often the manufacturing sector is underappreciated for its impact, not just locally, but regionally.
The energy future, you touched on it with the advent of moving from refineries, which has been a long lifeblood of the economy here, to biodiesel, to hydrogen, and taking it in. There's the new Green Empowerment Zone where people can go back and listen to the intro about that with the episode with Supervisor John Joya, where we introduced that concept and what's happening. What should our policymakers be thinking about as we transition to an energy future? What can the economy look like here? And more so, What is the role of East Bay leadership in helping to develop it from an advocacy standpoint?
Think something that's going to be really important, and I kind of touched on this earlier, is that it is we envision an all of the above energy future in world. Like this is where legislators, we're not legislating winners and losers related to energy. We are helping unlock innovation, and we are innovating in the energy sector in the East Bay. Like as you touched on, amazing investment in hydrogen happening right here, and partnerships with AC Transit and Chevron. You've got hydrogen happening at H Cycle and really exciting investments potentially unfolding in Pittsburgh. These are things to get excited about and bring me a lot of hope about what the future of the energy economy in the East Bay is going to look like. Because guess what? Cars aren't going away. They may be driving themselves, but how we power them is going to be critically important and will continue to be a really important part of the Bay Area economy. And I think too often folks in other part of the Bay Area, because their cousins, sisters, brothers, and friends aren't the folks who are employed in those industries. It's easy to say, oh, just shut down that industry in the region, but these have significant regional importance. And I think that our Contra Costa Economic Partnership will have a role to play in asking and answering some questions exactly to that point. Okay, so we understand that the energy economy is changing. If these changes were to happen, what's the impact on the Bay Area economy? And I'm excited to help answer some of those questions in the months and years to come.
Just like we were talking about the energy economy and how important it is here, healthcare and the healthcare workforce is important to the East Bay region. It is to every area, but I think a large percentage here. How can the organization help Contra Costa develop and innovate the healthcare workforce, recruit new workers, retain the workers, fill in shortages?
Yeah, absolutely. No, healthcare workforce has been top of the list for a long time. Economic Partnership even developed a report alongside the Contra Costa Workforce Development Board a couple years ago, looking specifically at meeting the needs of our healthcare sector, identified some critical gaps in our healthcare workforce. And I think we are looking for opportunities to help incubate initiatives that are really innovating related to the healthcare workforce. There's a lot to be excited about in the East Bay, and the East Bay Leadership Council will continue to advocate on key issues there. But I think more importantly, our economic partnership has played a role both in the last few years. We had a report that took a really close look at the healthcare workforce gaps. We partnered on that report with the Contra Costa Workforce Development Board. And I think there's some really interesting findings there that'll inform our advocacy work as a region. Additionally, we're really focused on identifying ways, particularly in partnership with the Bay Area Health Workforce Partnership, to expand and incubate some really exciting models related to the healthcare workforce and apprenticeship models that I think have a lot of potential for helping the local workforce meet the local healthcare industry's need. Because that's the goal, right? We want the people who live here to get hired and stay here, because if they grew up here and then they work at these local healthcare companies, they're more likely to stay, and they're more likely to see lower turnover rates, and they're more likely to have higher cultural competencies in these industries, and raise the quality of life and health and well-being of our regions. I'm really excited about that. I think there's some incredible models related to apprenticeships that I hope that we will have the opportunity to be involved with and incubate in the region.
That's really helpful to understand and a good priority that could help a lot of organizations and employers here. You and I have been in a lot of meetings where data has come up, going back to a fractured economic development system that we have here in the East Bay with lots of different organizations who participate. What is the benefit of data? How can the organization come together? Who should be coming together? And what would be the benefits to people out there?
I am very optimistic about the potential for our region to harness data in a really meaningful way to answer those questions that companies need answered if they're going to decide to locate here. I think it's going to be really important that potentially we be really strategic about the kind of data that we seek. You know, there are some that are going to really advocate for just unleashing the dam of data right? But that also unleashes a lot of work. And you're going to be unloading that on a lot of our, city and county staff who maybe don't have the resources or bandwidth, who care about this issue, who want to advance it, but want to be strategic. I want to unleash data. I think I want to be strategic with it. I want to ask the question like, hey, are we trying to get data that is focused on economic recovery and business attraction? Then let's focus there first. Ultimately, maybe the goal is to unleash it all. But I think that's the role that hopefully our organization will play in helping to build that political momentum, excitement, and put the right parameters on it so that it's hopeful. Because the last thing I want to do is create more work for our cities in this space that doesn't have the ultimate economic payoff. So that's my goal on data. But lots of energy there. The Diablo Valley Tech Initiative and their leaders, I have to give them credit there for this being an idea that they have championed, and we hope that we can be a partner in advancing that work in the year to come.
So you see data coming in partnership with all the cities and county government in the region.
I mean, that would be the goal, right? I think maybe you have a proof of concept. Maybe you start small. Like you start somewhere, you start with the jurisdiction who's ready for the challenge. And then when you deliver and show the benefits that this can have and you have a framework in place, I think others will follow. I'm excited about that opportunity.
I know a lot of people know Mark and both organizations, but how do people find out more about the organization and the work you're doing?
Great question. Really were teaming me up there, Jared. The East Bay Leadership Council is eastbayleadershipcouncil.com. We've got a regular newsletter that keeps folks informed. The economic partnership is at ccpartnership.org. I'm also one of the easiest people to find. Call us, email me. I'm happy to connect and have conversation about issues that you're facing. Well, as an employer, public or private sector, or just a concerned citizen of the East Bay who want the better future. So happy to connect anytime, but eastbayleadershipcouncil.com and eastbaypartnership.org.
Mark Orcutt from the East Bay Leadership Council and Contra Costa Economic Partnership. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you. Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Asch, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.